1992. First in Washington, D.C., this is my 41st year in Congress. And I will say truthfully, this is probably the least organized Congress to solve problems I've ever served in. And a lot of people say, why is that happening? What has happened? Well, very frankly, it started really with Newt Gingrich when he got elected as Speaker, and the idea he gained more control into the Speaker's office, and it got accelerated under Nancy Pelosi, where the Speaker became the President, really, of the Congress. And that's not as it should be. The Congress, in fact, should be run, as I first went down there, by the chairman of the committees. And because the committees know what they're doing and how they should write bills. And when we come to the floor, we came together, Republican and Democrat, as one. And we defended our legislations. We did the hearing, we did the writing, did the research to make sure we had good legislation. That doesn't happen today. And you're all going to be faced with that then in 2014 if you haven't been faced with it already. When you think about the President's so-called, or Nancy Pelosi's health care bill, this is a train wreck. Even Max Baucus said it, this is a train wreck. It's going to affect everybody in this room on the negative side. You, in fact, will have less medicine, less access, and it's going to cost a tremendous amount of dollars in taxes. And as I mentioned before, no one really understands it. I think you've watched on TV this ad where there's a stack of regulations higher than me now that no one's read. No one knows anything about the bill, let alone the regulations. And how will that be implemented? How will it affect you individually? And how will it affect businesses? Will you be covered? Those questions still not have been answered. And I'm trying to get the Speaker and the Majority Leader on the Senate side and the President to look at these issues now. We won't repeal it, but we can improve it instead of saying, well, it'll be okay. Let it work itself out. That's one of the goals we're trying to do this year. Will it happen by 2014? That is very doubtful. The second thing we're facing with is the new Syria. It's something I want you to consider. I don't like what I heard today, what's happening in Syria by part of the President saying they may rethink about what is occurring in that area with the Assad and the so-called rebels or freedom fighters. This is not about freedom fighters, ladies and gentlemen. This is about gaining control. And I don't want to see any other young Americans killed overseas when we are not going to accomplish the goals we're set forth in Iraq or Afghanistan. To get involved in Syria would be a terrible thing to happen to the United States again, especially with our military and the build down is occurring. That is a challenge I have and the delegation has, because we are building down the military. That could affect Fairbanks tremendously. I was just down yesterday and talking to some students in Eagle River, and 90% of those students are J-Bear students. And we pull out a battalion out of the state of Alaska or more. And what we would do with them, I don't know. That'll affect every school in this area. And I'm trying to talk to the military that the mission for and with the military should be in Alaska. If they want to shut bases down, shut down Fort Lewis, shut down Fort Hood, shut down Bolvar, shut down Fort Meade. These are what I call resort areas for the military. You can't train in those areas. You can train in Alaska. And I'm hoping the city of Fairbanks and the leaders of Fairbanks and Anchorage work together to try to make sure we expose the need for the mission here in Alaska, because we can get to North Korea in a very short period of time. In fact, we can get into the Middle East in a very short period of time from Alaska, not from New York or from Texas or those other areas. That's the challenge we have as Alaskans. Now, debt-wise, we've got the real challenge. What's going to come up this next month is probably a month or a month after that will be the debt ceiling. And are we going to address the issue of spending? And are we going to make it easier to make real dollars? And this is the theme that I'm trying to convince people of. You can't cut your way into prosperity. You can control spending. You can't build your prosperity by borrowing money. So you have to use what we made this nation great, and that's the utilization of our natural resources and manufacturing from. We stopped doing that. We stopped doing that beginning about 45 years ago. We started buying everything with borrowed money. Now we're at $17 trillion in debt. That's just federal debt. That doesn't include state debt. California, lady from California, you're dead broke. You haven't got a nickel anywhere. That's why I moved out of there 55 years ago. Before Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's not go there. I'll be back, and I won't have either. But we have personal debt, so we're up to here in debt. Now, the way to get out of that is, in fact, to utilize our resources and make it more exhibition, to be able to do something with your resources, developing your factories again, developing your resources, and that should be done here in Alaska. We're sitting here fat, dumb, and happy. Fairbanks, not necessarily, because cost of fuel is extremely high. And Anchorage, they don't notice, they still got natural gas. But how long have we talked about a gas line? Forever. More than 65 years we're talking about a gas line. How long have we talked about the Susitna Dam? About 50 years. How long have we done? When was the last time we built anything in Alaska? When was the last time we built something that created new dollars? We've been living off one source of income pretty much all the time. And it's got now 600,000 barrels a day going through it, the pipeline. And if we don't get oil in that pipeline pretty quick, I told a young man yesterday, what about the future? I said, you better get into the U-Haul business. Because everybody's going to be leaving this state because the economy is not here. And we have to start thinking about where are our resources, how can we develop it, and when we argue with the federal government, build them. Do it. Don't say we can't do it because the EPA won't let us do it, or the Corps won't let us do it, or the Fish and Wildlife won't let us do it. Let's do something as a state. That was a guarantee when we became a state, that we'd have a right of 103 million acres of land for our social and economic well-being. And that brings me up to the last subject I want to talk about, because it's very controversial, is this constant battle about Pebble Mine. You may not be aware of it, you may not think it affects you, but it does, because it's state land. State land. State put it up for discovery, it was found. Under the discovery clause, you're allowed to explore. And under the explore clause, if it proves to be there, you have a right to develop, if you can do it safely, as a state. Now we brought in the federal government. If the EPA makes a ruling you can't develop the mine on state land, it was let by the state, that means we've lost our state totally. Because the state, in any place in the area we try to develop something, they'd use the same idea, it would affect the watershed. And then we would not have any ability to make an income in this great state of ours. And that makes me very concerned with the future generation. It doesn't bother me. It does bother the fact that I got 14 grandkids. And those 14 grandkids, I want to have a job that's in the state, it's not government. I want to have a job that will be producing something and making something. And if we don't wake up and say, wait a minute, we can't allow this to happen, that could occur. And that goes for the native lands too. People forget they got 44 million acres of land. And by the way, that's the largest economic force in the state right now. If in fact they have their right to utilize that land taken away by interest groups from outside or a federal agency, then they might as well say go back to the old days and the igloos, etc. That's the challenge we have as Alaska. I'm glad to be back here in Fairbanks. It's